Good afternoon, unlockers. It is Friday, the 11th of December. We're hurtling halfway into December, so I hope you're all well and safe and happy. Steph and I are a little bit below par this week, are we not, Steph? So do bear with us today.
Yeah, COVID, I think, has hit us locally. So, yet I think my fourth COVID test now. Still waiting. It's been about 5, 6 days. So, yeah, probably won't get this one either, the results, but we'll see what happens. But
Yeah. So
yeah,
everybody take care. My COVID test was negative, but so I've probably got some other horrible virus or something. But we soldier on, we soldier on. But when our tanks are low, Steph, it's much easier to get overwhelmed. And overwhelm is the topic that we've been covering this week, isn't it, for ADHD Unlocked members? But I've certainly been feeling quite overwhelmed. My daughter's had to be self-isolating because she was in contact with a positive case at school, so we've all had to get tested. So it's been quite stressful. Christmas is coming up and I can feel my kind of levels starting to rise. So I'm not the only one, am I?
no, I mean, it's been a really rough year for many of us, particularly ADHDs and the lockdowns. At least we're allowed out now. But yeah, having the kids at home as well when they're isolating, juggling the homeschooling and your own work and the household. Yeah, very easy for us to fall into overwhelm. And that's what we were discussing this week. And yeah, I mean, there's so much that just kind of tips us over. We've covered sensory kind of overload a few weeks ago, those sensory challenges that a lot of us ADHDers really struggle with because it takes a lot of energy to be able to deal with some of these sensory kind of triggers, like, if it's too noisy, too hot, we can get into sensory overwhelm that just kind of tips us over the edge, and a few of us melting down or getting very angry, which we're going to cover next week.
Yeah, it's really easy to kind of get into that state, and there's many different types of overwhelm, isn't there? I tend to get overwhelmed with sometimes even when really good things happen. So lots of social stuff. I mean, for example, on my birthday last week, I got really exhausted in the evening. It'd been brilliant. I'd had a wonderful day, but I even felt overwhelmed with kind of the change in the volume and the keeping in touch with people and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, too much stimulation. That's why it's quite difficult, because as ADHDers, right, our brain craves stimulation. There's that real fear of losing interest. So we go looking for it actively, needing to fill up every spare moment in our day. Otherwise, it's just horrifying to see this void. So we look for the stimulation, we put it in the calendars, and then we're so surprised at how overwhelmed we are.
Yes, exactly. And the way that I respond to overwhelm is in several different ways. So sometimes I get really exhausted and my brain just kind of freezes. So even if I really wanted to do something, it's almost like you're physically and mentally unable. So it's like a freeze response. You just get completely exhausted and your brain, I call it cotton wool brain. So brain fog, I think some people refer to it. It feels like my brain's been stuffed with cotton wool instead of actual brains. So I can't actually do anything, and just this cloud of exhaustion. And then there's that kind of flight, so you just want to get out of there, go for a drive, go for a walk. So there's that kind of freeze or flight, or sometimes the fight. Yes. When don't something can trigger you into kind of losing your SH1T, for example, with people, and your tank's just kind of completely empty. So, just a little trigger. So for me, it's fight, flight, or freeze when I get overwhelmed.
I think pretty much for most all ADHD is that's the kind of response, and unfortunately it happens to us a lot. Unfortunately, we socially, there's a real impact that we often feel too overwhelmed to even socialize, to even talk to our friends and we discussed this with a few of our members in our Wednesday meetup, and where everyone shared their common experiences of overwhelm, what it looks like. One of our members has said, I go for fight. And yeah, we do tend to have our preferred response mechanisms, yeah, fight, flight, or freeze. Some of us, actually, the workaholic types, our response to overwhelm is to work even more, to try and get on top of it. So it's interesting. It's everyone's different, and what we really emphasized this week was being able to name it, to tame it, to be able to identify, well, what is, or what are those triggers, and how is it that we're responding, and what could we do differently to reduce the overwhelm, either in the first place or to mitigate against the challenges that come with it.
Yeah, because you get caught in a vicious circle. And I posted like a comedy Spider-Man meme within the ADHD Unlocked main group this week, which was, you get overwhelmed because you've got too much to do. So then the opposite of that is, because you're overwhelmed, you then can't do anything. So it's kind of like this spiral of not being able to get anything done and becoming more overwhelmed because you're not doing the stuff that you need to do. So it's stopping that happening is the most important thing, isn't it, Steph, in the first place, and getting into that spiral, fight, flight, freeze, the circle of overwhelm.
Yeah, no, really, I mean, that's bang on point. You use the word stopping. And that's the other issue. How many of us ADHDs actually stop? We usually just charge right in, don't stop to take a breath. We don't have that pause. And at ADCART, they're always talking to us about how important the power of the pause is for us, to be able to just kind of step back, but to check in with, and I know, Mish, you've always really emphasized this, in terms of checking in with your feelings, checking in with how full your tank is, because that determines what you should be taking on that day, what your expectations should be of yourself that day.
Yeah, and when we are busy, we forget to do that. So we have to have visual reminders to do that checking in, where maybe it's 3 times a day: morning, noon, late afternoon, evening, 4 times a day, bedtime. How am I feeling? What can I do tomorrow? What can I plan to do tomorrow? So when I checked in this morning, I knew that I wasn't feeling completely physically well. I've got a bit of a headache. I have tested negative for COVID, so it's probably some other kind of cold virus, got sore throat, feeling very tired. So it would have been ridiculous for me to go, right, I'm going to, all these things that I need to do this today, because that would be setting myself up for failure and setting myself up for more overwhelm, with the guilt that would come along with the fact that I planned to do this today but wasn't able to. And so just checking in and actually going through that conversation with yourself in your head, going, look, you're not well. And so what would you do if you were a friend, or if it was your partner or your child or whatever? How would you say? You would say, take it easy today, you're not very well, you need to top up your tank, what can you do? You wouldn't go, well, go on then, crack on, and then feel really guilty about all the things you haven't been able to do, and completely stuff your diary filled, because that's going to set you up for more overwhelm. But the trick is to kind of just check in before you get to that place of fight, flight, or freeze, which I've managed to do today, and kind of go, look, we're in the danger zone here because you're not feeling very well, and Christmas is coming up, you haven't done anything for Christmas shopping yet, and all of this kind of thing. But I've had to kind of put that aside and say, look after yourself, make sure you get your vitamin C, you rest, and if you're really, really tired, sit down for 20 minutes, close your eyes, meditate, and don't feel bad about it. Do not feel bad, because otherwise, if you get yourself to that massive overwhelmed state, you're not going to be able to do anything.
Exactly. And
it's a pit stop you need.
Yeah, no, so exactly what you're saying there, Mish, in that you can hear perspective, right? Getting perspective, which again is really difficult in the moment when you're really overwhelmed. It's kind of impossible and you've really got to get yourself out of your own head at that time. But before that, before you reach that point, if you can get perspective through what a lot of our members suggested on Wednesday, very much, talking it through with themselves, like you said, Mish, and kind of doing a sense check with themselves, and also asking themselves the question, well, so what if that actually happens? Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Well, hang on, it's not that big a deal. Getting it in perspective is a really big strategy for them, talking to themselves and getting that sense check, as well as getting some support, not being afraid to ask. Like this morning, usually I think it was my morning to take care of the kids while my husband went cycling. And I woke up and I wasn't, my neck was sore, wasn't feeling great, but I still went downstairs and was kind of prepared to kind of do it. And then I thought, no, can't do this. And I said sorry and asked my husband to step in. And that's not easy for me. It's not easy for a lot of ADHDers that soldier on and that, need to meet their obligations. But again, I had to have, self-compassion and perspective that this wasn't a good idea. I should just stop and let my husband go.
And I think that's great. And there's a few reasons why we don't do you usually don't do what you did this morning, which is brilliant. And that's because sometimes we're not aware that we're in that state because we have failed to check in and we just say, oh, I'm fine. And because our head's so full, we don't actually have stopped to realize that we're feeling ill, or we're feeling tired, or we're feeling emotional, or this is going on. And also the kind of people pleasing side of things and not wanting to let people down. And oh God, I can't say this, I can't ask for help because they're busy too and they've got their own stuff. We're not very good asking for help at all. And also sometimes we don't even know how to articulate that help, because
so
breaking down of the steps, the executive function needed to kind of go, I don't actually know what I need, because my executive dysfunction is so much so today, especially as my tank's low, that I can't even articulate it. So that's difficult. But if you check in with yourself before that stage, that becomes a tactic to manage that.
Yeah, there were some great strategies our members came up with on Wednesday. So I really enjoyed the session. And I mean, we're all an incredible resource for each other, you see. So it's just completely enriched when we've got our members suggesting the things that work for them. And some of the things that work for them included music. So getting out of that state through some kind of uplifting music, because nothing stimulates more areas of the brain than music, apparently. So that was one, as well as things like, cycling or swimming, even visualization. So we had one member who went on this fantastic holiday that she's still got very strong memories of. And she's got a picture in her room. And just by looking at that, just for a few moments, she can kind of get out of that overwhelmed state and feel that kind of holiday feeling, which I'm sure a lot of us are really missing by now.
Yeah. And this is really important to realize that we're all overwhelmed. Neurotypical people as well as ADHDers, we're going to feel it more. We're going to feel the pressure more. Shopping's more difficult this year, socializing, pubs, there's more to kind of organize with families, all of that kind of thing, in terms of logistics and keeping safe from COVID. It's massively overwhelming. So don't feel bad. Just expect that you're going to be overwhelmed. So predict that you are. Shops are busy, going shopping, but just look out for yourself, forgive yourself, and expect it, and head it off at the pass, rather than finding yourself, oh, I'm stuck in the overwhelm, I've become overwhelmed. Head it off at the pass now. Write down, take some time to go, how can I prevent myself getting overwhelmed in the next 2 weeks over the Christmas period, because it is massively overwhelming at this time of year and really, really difficult, particularly in 2020.
Yeah, definitely being kind to yourself. And as well, I think what helps is making sure your environment, which unfortunately sometimes can be overwhelming in itself with all our clutter on the desk and everything we've accumulated. But a lot of our members say that, and I agree with this, I'm sure Mish as well, kind of investing that time and kind of first thing is just kind of clearing the decks of your desk, or, if you have to do some work, it really does help reduce that overwhelm so that you can get started. And we also discussed how reducing decision fatigue is also a fantastic strategy for reducing overwhelm.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm looking at my desk now and thinking how much less overwhelmed I'd be if I just tidied it. So I'm going to have some lunch and then I'm going to do that. And, just little tiny things in your environment. Sometimes when you are overwhelmed, you can't even face doing that. Yeah. But just if you maybe get the support of the community or somebody that you live with, or just go onto Zoom and get a buddy to go, look, I can't really do this, and get someone to do it with you, that would really, really help. But we know what it's like with overwhelm. It's almost universal to ADHDers, but there are lots of strategies that we share within the ADHD Unlocked community to help you with that. And next week, going on from overwhelm, we can sometimes lose it and become angry, and other people can become angry. So how do we manage our own anger and keeping a lid on things, and how do we manage anger from others, and how do we respond to that? So that's next week, which is quite relevant to the holiday season as well, particularly in this year. So that's what we're covering next week. So do join us as members if you want to look at anger, both from the perspective of managing it for yourself, managing it with other people. So we're quite excited about that, so that we can keep a lid on things in the Christmas period, aren't we, Steph?
Yes, very important. That'll be a very interesting chat to join, guys. So yeah, I'm sure our members will have lots of experiences to share, but also some really helpful strategies, which I'm sure, you know, we're looking forward to hearing as well. So yeah, do come and join us.
Yeah, so get well soon, Steph, and take care, everybody. Top up your tanks. If you don't feel like going Christmas shopping, getting overwhelmed, don't do it. Things can wait. It's not the end of the world. So just keep an eye on your tanks this week, and we'll see you next week for managing anger. So take care, everybody, and stay well and safe, and have a lovely, lovely, peaceful weekend. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.